welcome to the Art of Action Figures. On this episode, we're looking at the SH Figuarts Vegeta 24,000 power level. This just arrived from Premium Bandai, and I wanted to film the unboxing and capture my first impressions of the figure. And of course, I'll be comparing the 24,000 Namek Vegeta here to his predecessor, the Saga Vegeta. I don't have the 1.0, but I do have the 2.0 Saga Vegeta. I think this is formerly known as Scouter Vegeta, but since Namek Saga here also comes with a Scouter, to disambiguate between the two, I'm going to say Namek and Saiyan Vegeta. This is honestly one of my favorite figures. Just the variety of accessories, and I really like the way that it's sculpted. I like the very clean aesthetic. For the most part, the 2.0 lower body doesn't bother me as much on this Vegeta, since he does have these skirt flaps, which kind of get in the way anyways. Because of the way they designed this Scouter, he includes an entire second base form head, which you can use on like Android Saga Vegeta. And so just a ton of value packed into this release. I'm curious how this one will compare, but I have some misgivings about it. And we can go ahead and get into that as I take him out of the shipper box here. If it's your first time here, thanks for stopping by and welcome. And if not, welcome back. I've got trusty hobby knife here, and I'm just going to go ahead and cut the tape along the end of this shipper box. A lot of people ask what these are for, what to do with them. Personally, I like to keep them just in storage. I like to keep them just so that I have a nice form-fit protective box for my figures if I ever need to move them. And this is the first time I've gotten a figure from Premium Bandai that has a bit of damage on this box. Very minor, but you can see this is slightly bent inward along that front face of the box. Tight fit. All right. And I can see a loose ear where it's not supposed to be, so I will be very careful not to lose that. On the front, we have, across the bottom are all of your brand logos and consumer safety information and authenticity stickers. We've got Bandai, Tamashii Nations, Dragon Ball Z, holographic Toei Animation sticker, holographic Tamashii Nations quality sticker, it's the small one. Warning, choking hazard, small parts, not for children under 3 years and intended for ages 15 plus. Product may differ from photo. Designed by Tamashii Nations in Japan, Bandai Spirits made in China. We have some figure photography across the box. I love how they feature figure photography on their boxes and arrange them in these kind of manga panels. We have this royal blue accent color taken straight from Vegeta's undersuit, which looks really nice. The left side's not that interesting. Across the top, we have very angry shouting face. On the bottom, just serious looking forward face. On the right side, an arm. Not Final Flash. What is this one called? The one that kind of looks like Final Flash, but he doesn't call it that yet. Grimacing face, which is interesting. It's not his foot. And then on the back, you can see more of those same images in full color. This one's the one from the top. Here's the one from the bottom. Here's the bunch of stuff about the SH Figuarts brand. Trusty hobby knife once again. And I'm going to go ahead and slice the tape along the right and stick my blade under the flap, push towards the back, and a little pop. And with that, I'm going to close my knife. Always be sure to close your knife when you are not using it. Some instructions showing the alternate hands and how to swap the crossed arms, which looks like a new type of system compared to the 2.0. And it looks like it's going to be a little bit easier since the crossed arms actually separate. Now, as I mentioned, we've got an ear on the run in the package here. Let's go ahead and sort that out, and we'll take a look at these accessories. You get one ear. Sometimes they give you an ear per. With this, you do get a little bit of a seam at the ear, and with these big old ears, it is quite noticeable. But I think the trade-off is the Scouter does fit a lot more securely since it actually plugs into the side of the head. It reaches the eye much better. The 2.0, to compare, he actually has a full ear sculpted under there on all of the heads, and then there's just this little notch behind the ear, and the Scouter kind of cups over the ear. And it can be a little bit hard to get it into place, and it tends to fall out. Now, going over his accessories, he has a total of 4 faces. This one is neutral with a slight smirk, grimacing, gritting his teeth, big shouting angry face, and then a slightly bigger smirk. I suppose this is a grin and this is a smirk. He has interchangeable crossed arms and 4 pairs of hands. The fists, the flat key blast hands, clenched finger open hands, and a pair of spread finger open hands. Now, I know some people are not going to like these shoulders. I'm not sure I like them yet, but they can get fairly close to closing the gap, but it seems like no matter what I do, there's always a little bit of a gap there. I don't necessarily mind action figures having cuts in them, though. So maybe they could have made his armor like a soft plastic overlay or something. But that has its own limitations, I suppose. But yeah, I'm really not sure about the placement of these either. They are on swivel hinges, but they're deeply tucked in, and so they're really not as mobile as like Broly, Dragon Ball Super Broly. They do kind of go up and back, which is good for raising the arm. They're either like this or like this. And I didn't realize these are actually just the 2.0 arms. The shoulders might be different or might not be. I don't know. Let's see. Yeah, the shoulders are maybe a little bit bigger, or maybe they just fit differently into the socket. The ankles are still not good, so they may be toppling over. New head sculpt, completely new head sculpt, of course. It's similar, but the shape of the hair is a bit more streamlined. I think both look pretty good, honestly. This one has definitely some sharper shapes in it, which looks pretty good. Some people really don't like this 2.0 head sculpt. I've always really liked it. I think it's just maybe a little generic. It's not necessarily Saiyan Saga Vegeta. It's just kind of base form Vegeta. But I liked that about it. It was interchangeable. It blends in with the rest of the line. I think if you put the Namek Saga head onto like Android or Buu Saga Vegeta's body, it would look a little weird just because of the more very distinct cartoony early Z art style with the bigger eyes and the small pupils and the big ears. You can tell how much bigger the ears are just based on the Scouter. Geez, look at that. The torso is completely new. The armor is much more on model, although you could make an argument that it's a little bit too wide. This one, they've clearly kind of fudged the shapes to help with the articulation a little bit, whereas here they've tried to stick as closely as possible to that Saiyan armor shape. I think it's done some things well and some things I kind of prefer on this one. Like the abdomen cut just looks much better being a continuous curve rather than how it's kind of like segmented around the armor. Design of the shoulder pads, which are kind of like Turles or Brawly, and they have this like swivel hinge system in here. And it basically prevents you from putting the shoulders in a natural position, which I would say is like there. And the shoulder pad definitely doesn't fit over the arm, over the shoulder. The blue for his undersuit is just a little bit of a more saturated blue with a little less of a purple tint. And of course he doesn't have the tail or the skirt pieces. The legs, which you would maybe think are the same, are actually a bit different. And kind of softened the upper legs a bit, just toned down the muscle definition, and they've actually given him a little bit of a wrinkle at the top of the thigh. And that is pretty accurate to the way Vegeta was drawn at the time. His pants are just a little bit of a looser fit. Namek Vegeta is a little bit shorter, and the difference is right at the knees. You can see his knees are actually a bit lower compared to Saiyan Saga Vegeta's knees. And it's just because they've kind of redone these lower legs and made them a little bit shorter for some reason. You can see the color on the armor is much more of a light brown tan, less bright yellow. These ribs are really, really sharply sculpted. They're a little bit hard to see in the 2.0, but they're very well defined and sharp looking on the 3.0, so that's pretty cool. I don't remember, did his armor lose the white stripe down the middle of the back between the Saiyan and the Namek Saga? Another difference with his upper body here, the collar on Namek Vegeta clearly has kind of a little bit of undershirt poking through. The skin tone also matches a little bit better. The sculpt is better in some places. Like I really like the shape of the shoulder pads. I think they got that much closer. The sharpness in the grooves on those parts is really good. The chest is really good, but the way that they stuck the shoulder pads blocks the arms from sitting where they should and makes him look a little bit too wide, I think, in the upper body. You can kind of bring the shoulders in a little to compensate, but then the shoulder pads are going to stick up and create that gap that everybody was not so happy with in the promo pics. I think it's probably a figure that'll look better when posed, so we'll be sure to do lots of that. And then around the back, again, you can see the sharper grooves in the armor. He's got the little wrinkles at the top of his pants. And I'm pretty sure they gave him a new butt. We'll have to see with maybe the Android Saga Vegeta, but... And just taking a quick look at the 2.0 Saiyan Saga Vegeta side by side with Namek Vegeta here. This is kind of another reason why I was maybe feeling a bit of a pinch on Namek Vegeta. You can see there's not a ton more accessories on Saiyan Saga, but there are more. He does have one less pair of hands, but then he has the Scouter with a readout. He has the over 9,000 hand crushing the Scouter, and of course an alternate tail, and an entire second base form Vegeta head. That is a full head sculpt in there, and it's just because there's a little bit of a gap behind his left ear. If you want to put the Scouter on this head, this Vegeta, Namek Vegeta, is Premium Bandai exclusive, and typically Premium Bandai figures are just more expensive than retail figures. They're produced at a lower quantity. That's what makes them premium. It's not that they're better than retail figures. It's just they're more expensive for Figuarts to make, so you have to pay a bit of a premium to get these at all if you want them. But they're exclusive, and they're characters that you're not going to get otherwise. So all works out for me at least. What I don't love is when they put a figure that I think would have no trouble at retail on premium Bandai. And that brought this price up to like over $80 after shipping, because they charge $10 shipping no matter what. If I were designing my dream release, it would be combining these figures into a single figure that probably looks more like this one, but with an interchangeable skirt piece, and preferably upgraded 3.0 hips, just because these are not very good. I think 2.0 Scouter Vegeta was a general release, and retail was like around $50. Paying more for less is never a great feeling. I really don't think this version of Vegeta needs to be on premium Bandai to exist. It kind of feels just like an artificial scarcity thing. They could have just re-released this figure, maybe given the faces updated prints, and tweaked the armor colors just a little bit, and I think people would have gone nuts for that. So I don't really get the strategy here. Maybe they do have more plans for early Z Vegeta. The one that I desperately want is the Frieza Saga Vegeta with the dark blue undersuit. Now, a quick note on head swaps. The faceplates are not directly interchangeable. The connections are just a little bit different between the two back hair pieces, but you can see new 24,000 Vegeta is using the swivel hinge ball combo joint. So let's go ahead and try the new head on the old body. It's going to be tight, but I think it'll go. Yeah, that goes on. This head is a very good upgrade on the Saiyan Saga Vegeta body as well, if you are looking for something a little more early Z art style. This new head is really, really good. If you happen to like the 2.0 head sculpt a little better, it fits just as well on the Namek Saga body. Now, going over Vegeta's articulation. It's going to be some unusual pieces because the shoulders just really don't work like Figuarts shoulders should. So we'll just go top to bottom. I can't exactly create a horizontal reference line because his arms don't go back. They crash into the armor, so we're just going to have to kind of approximate at an angle like this, and that'll work all right. So looking up is actually really, really good. Pretty effortless to get him into a flying pose. The torso can also tilt back just a little to help get him looking almost vertical, maybe 70 degrees vertical. And looking down is also really good. With the ab crunch going forward, it's honestly not a lot. I would like to see more. There's definitely room for improvement. This feels like a single ball peg in there. I don't know why it isn't just a double ball peg, but the neck, while it works really well, it does have the kind of nuisance of the hinge in there, and it gets very gappy. Probably one of the most gappy Figuarts necks that I've seen. I don't know why it sits so high. The elbows are just your 2.0 double hinge elbows, and they go just past 90. The wrists are on your standard swivel hinge ball peg, so they can go in and out, and they also can go up and down just a little. Could use a little more room there. The shoulders, we've seen them swiveling around here. This armor is definitely kind of a hazard of this figure. both the chest piece that has this sharp point, and this is a hard plastic, plus the hinge along the back. You can see that's already starting to kind of wear on the shoulder there, on both the front and the back. It's just kind of what it is. I'm not really sure it's safe to move this shoulder and not experience that. So that's definitely a drawback with this design. We saw the ab crunch and lean backward are not tremendous. They do feel pretty safe around the painted parts on his lower torso. There's lots of room. The downside is that room means there's a pretty significant gap there. He can twist more so at the waist. He twists a little at the diaphragm joint, but not very much, just because his torso is kind of oblong. So if you want to swivel him, that's quite a sound, but you can use the waist. He doesn't really tilt at the waist, which was something the 2.0 figures used to do. I'm not sure why they did away with that, but 2.0 Vegeta hips have just always been bad, and they didn't fix them on this one, unfortunately. The problem is the shape of the hip cap. The shape of it is pretty round across here, whereas the shape of his crotch is pretty flat right here. And so the problem is when you crash that round shape into a flat shape, it gets, it kind of hits a corner right here, and it won't go any further past that. Now, I think they improved it on the Majin Vegeta figure, but it would have been good to see, if they're going to reuse the 2.0 Vegeta legs, at least reuse the good ones. That's disappointing. They're not terrible. They can kick forward really well. It's just going... They can kick forward really well, but like going back, you can't even kick the leg to the side and back just because the hip cap is there. If you popped the leg off and took the hip cap off, that could maybe get around it, but I don't want to risk popping the leg off at this time. The double hinged knees look really good, work really well, so no complaints with those. Then these 2.0 Vegeta ankles, another sore spot for a lot of people because they really are kind of the finishing touch on your pose. You've got them all ready to go in the stance you want, and you just need to get the feet flat on the floor, and nope, these are not going to let you do it. But they do actually have possibly some improvements here on the shape of the foot. Like, I don't know if all of the Vegeta figures are like this, but the peg seems really far forward on the boot, and the foot has like a pretty long cavity cut out. And what that allows you to do is really point the toe down, which is awesome, especially for those flying and kicking poses. But that's about the only good direction for these ankles. The up hinge is not very much. He does have the toe hinge, and it has a metal pin in there, which sticks out just a little bit, but the toe hinge covers maybe 30 degrees plus 20, a little past 45. It's not incredible range, but it's good to have a toe hinge, and it looks pretty clean. It's actually seamless at the top. I've never really paid much attention to that, but these boots with this design, a lot of boots have like a toe deco. These ones are just plain white, and so if there was any kind of cavity carved out on the toe, it would definitely stand out like there is on the bottom, but there isn't anything like that on the top, so that's kind of cool, but it does limit the range a little bit. Okay, the shoulders can do T-posing pretty well, and they look pretty good. This is honestly one of their better positions to be in, just because of the way that the shoulder pads move up and out of the way, and the shoulders can kind of fill in that space. The neck, it tilts to the side, but it's mostly the lower neck doing that. You can get a little bit of tilt on the ball joint that connects into the head, but that hinge, remember, was oriented forward and back, and he's kind of going to hit the shoulder at a certain point anyways, so he gets almost to the shoulder like that. But the nice thing about the neck is it's pretty freely posable. I do like the double ball peg system that they've done on more recent figures, but this is serviceable. The torso tilt, now get ready to be underwhelmed. The torso tilt is not great. Maybe like 5 or 10 degrees. It's pretty bad. To be honest, I would hope that an all-new torso they would be able to get a little bit more movement out of it, but this one, the shape of it is just a little too extreme, and they put a single ball joint instead of 2 ball joints in there, it feels like. And that's really disappointing. Like, Vegeta, all these Dragon Ball characters really need to be posable, and that's just not quite enough. Kicking to the side, again, these 2.0 hips, really not their strongest suit here. Maybe 45 degrees either direction. And because of the leg not being able to kick backwards all the way, you can't even do the kind of faked side split by rotating the waist. And finally, the ankle pivot, it's these double ball pegs, and again, like I was showing earlier, it just doesn't work very well in any direction except down. So same old for Vegeta here, unfortunately, and in fact, maybe a little bit worse in the torso and the shoulders. The neck is pretty similar. The elbows and the knees are exactly the same. But yeah, the shoulders, again, while they're 3.0, armor point here just completely gets in the way. You can bring the shoulders up and over it if you want to bring his hands together. And I think this is how they did the sort of Final Flash, not Final Flash pose on the box. They have him kind of leaning forward and doing something more like this. But it'd be nice to be able to do that with the arms lower if you really want to. You can bring the arms straight up, and the shoulder pads do get out of the way to do that, so that's pretty cool. Looks pretty good from the front. From the back, this is going to look kind of goofy. I guess this is a good flight pose too. You got a kind of Superman flying pose for him. The articulation is not the best on this Vegeta, unfortunately. It is just showing its age in the 2.0 parts, and the 3.0 parts that are here are not very good. So all around, a little stiff, Vegeta, a little stiff. Got to work on the flexibility. And hopefully, when we do get a full 3.0 Vegeta, it's more like, I guess, Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta, which is pretty much the only well-articulated Vegeta figure out there. When you get to the Buu Saga Vegeta, that boy's got to move. In some ways, the sculpt is good, and I think that's probably the standout along with the faceplates, but the range mobility just is a little bit of a struggle. Tamashii have been trying all sorts of things to work around this Saiyan armor problem for years, so I wanted to just go over a couple of the variations they've done, starting with Turles, who has the most in common with Namek Vegeta. They have the same design for the shoulder pads, but it works infinitely better on Turles because that sort of ball shape of his shoulder is much, much smaller in proportion to the entire socket, whereas Vegeta, for whatever reason, they seem to have oversized his shoulders so much, and it makes them almost the same size as the socket. And so no matter what you do, this little hinge that the armor piece is connected to back here is pushing his shoulders forward, and it doesn't look good. There's just so much shoulder in there. There's no room to really move them while repositioning the armor. So like, for example, plenty of room to roll the shoulder around without even pushing up against this hinge. So that's why that design works for Turles. For Vegeta, what are we doing with these giant shoulders? I mean, if you just look at the size of Turles' biceps compared to his shoulders, and then look at Vegeta's, I don't know if it's because they just ended up here reusing the arms that were originally made for like Super Saiyan Cell Saga Vegeta, but he needed new shoulders. Another difference with Turles, you can see the cut around his abdomen is more continuous and curved. And again, for Vegeta, I don't know, for whatever reason, it's got this really abrupt, sharp angle there that just calls attention to itself when it doesn't need to. And I get maybe the Saiyan Saga armor is slightly different from the Namek Saga armor. I don't remember that being a difference, and I probably wouldn't notice if they did it the same way as the Saiyan armor. And then we touched on a little bit, I don't know how far forward his shoulders are actually going to be able to hinge because of the point of his chest armor here. If you try to bring his arms across his chest, they're just going to slam into that. You're probably going to scuff them up like it's already done here. What could they have done about that? Well, they've already got at least one solution on the table, and that is what they did with Kid Gohan in the Frieza Saga armor. He comes with an alternate chest plate, and you can take this one off, and it just changes the shape at the corners of his armor there. The shoulders no longer sit flush. Now the shoulders are not the best looking here because they don't swivel at all. The same style of armor is able to do this, but we saw Vegeta was not quite capable of it. These two look great together though. As an alternative to the articulated shoulder pads, Jace, while he does still have the hinge design, he also came with these alternate shoulder parts, which are formed in a different shape that basically lets him pose with his arm raised up, and they still look flush. However, the downside with this design is it's not actually connected because I cannot safely get this to attach. This armor piece might need heated, but it's so delicate, I don't feel super comfy heating it or pushing it onto his shoulder, but you can kind of see the idea. It gives you that sort of flexible armor with the raised shoulder that you would really need these characters to do. Alright, now with all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and clear the table a little bit and just take this figure in detail. What's really carrying it for me, I think, are these faces. They are so perfectly early Dragon Ball Z Vegeta with the big ears and the big eyes and the small pupils and more soft features. To swap the faces, you just want to take the scouter off just to be safe. There's just a simple 2 pegs at the top and then a square peg at the bottom. Let's go ahead and swap on his smirking face. Oh, that is fantastic. That looks so good. Man. All right. Let's give him his scouter back. I love this part of Dragon Ball Z. It's one of the few parts of Z that I am very nostalgic for because I had a hard time watching it in the 90s, and so the bits that really stuck with me the most were like short little arcs, which there weren't a lot of. So like when they got into the big climactic battles, the series would kind of lose me because I couldn't always catch many episodes in a row. So if something was like a nice self-contained episode or two, there was a much better chance that I would see the whole thing. And Vegeta recovering from the Saiyan Saga and just like living his best life for about 5 minutes. It's one of my favorite parts of the series, and I'm so excited that they're making Kui. I never thought they would, but pretty glad that he's coming, I think in a month or two, right? I'm going to try swapping on these crossed arms. So far, this left arm has given me a very hard time. Yeah, what you really want to do is push on the inner socket with your finger and then pull from holding the shoulder and just pull out. Now these crossed arms we saw are pretty cool because they can actually separate somehow. Let's see, how's that supposed to work? Yeah, at this glove here. So if I just pull it apart, yeah, okay, that's not too bad. Get these shoulder pads well back and out of harm's way behind him here. Now the problem is, as soon as I tried to push this shoulder ball socket in, the butterfly joint in there just pushed right up into the neck for that and attack it from above. And what I mean by that is, as you push in, watch, this joint is going to go up into his neck. See? And now you have to kind of get an angle down into the torso like this, and just make sure the ball is lined up on the socket and give it a little pressure, and it should pop into place. Now I'm going to do the same on the other arm. Try to get the shoulder pad out of the way. Now, you think, oh wow, that's going to be so easy, just pop it in. But no, there goes the joint into his neck. And so we're going to attack it from above. Make sure that ball is lined up. Oh, and that was pretty easy on that side. And now we need to be able to connect this wrist. Now, you can kind of push the arms down a little and bring them a little closer. But I find what works best is actually to lean into it and bring them up so that the white aligns with the white of the neck. And that way it creates a little bit more seamless look. Out of all the faces that Namek Vegeta comes with, the gritting teeth grimacing is by far my favorite. This is just a perfect early Dragon Ball angry face. The shouting face is also very good. It's just a little bit more specific. It's just maybe a little too exaggerated. For general use, it's very, you will not escape my wrath. If you know what I mean. The gritting teeth face is a really good general combat face. Pretty much everything except the hinge joints, like the elbows and knees, and... wow, thunderstorm going on. And the neck, and I guess the wrists, is pretty limited on this figure, and that's not great for, like, one of your main characters and main combatants. And shout out to our assistant here, Dodoria, one of the most underrated SH Figuarts out there. This guy is just made for being punched in the stomach. Just look at that face. Both Dodoria and Zarbon were on my best of 2022 list. And speaking of Zarbon, let's go ahead and sub him in. I mentioned I love the beginning of the Namek arc where Vegeta is on the top of his game and he knows it, and almost by instinct you just know that Vegeta's winning streak is about to come to an end when he breaks out his signature losing move, the capital L barrage that has never worked. This face is just perfect for Vegeta backed into a corner, his ego castle crumbling, crashing down all around him. Hats off for this expression. It's a really good one. While I don't have any yellow ki blasts, I do have the lightning kick effect from SHF Chun-Li. The Jada Toys one works pretty well, except it's of course blue, but yeah, this serves as a good stand-in for some yellow ki blasts. It actually looks pretty good if you bring it into a soft focus like that and you get the angle just right. Like so. Pretty happy with that. My thoughts on 24,000 Vegeta here are still pretty mixed. It's a great looking figure, especially in the head sculpt. I think the armor is really well done. The proportions are pretty good, but the way that the shoulders were engineered kind of forces you to do some funky stuff with them. It's definitely stiff and lacking range in both the 2.0 and 3.0 parts, which is pretty disappointing, and I don't like that those two generations are mixed here. It just kind of feels a little too kit-bashed together. I really don't understand why they mixed 2.0 and 3.0 like that, especially when the legs themselves are new sculpts. You can tell by the loose wrinkles, and they're nice, they look good. It's just the hips and the ankles are still pretty bad, and like struggling. It's a struggle just to get him to stand up with the way that those ankles are designed. It's like you're trying to balance him on a ball in some ways. It's pretty questionable that he's premium Bandai and not just a general release. It's Vegeta in probably his first or second most recognizable outfit, along with like the Android Saga look. And for the price, I really would have liked a couple more accessories, some ideas. If the Saiyan Saga one comes with a hand-crushing scouter, what about a foot-crushing scouter? That would have been cool, since he stomps on his scouter in front of Dodoria, right? Because that's after the Namekians destroy all of Frieza's group's scouters, and Dodoria needs the scouter to find the last Dragon Balls, and Vegeta has one, and that would have been cool. Vegeta also takes quite a bit of damage in this suit, so some battle damaged parts would have been cool. We've seen them do alternate abdomen and backplate for Krillin. They did alternate shoulder pads with Jace. Some broken up shoulder pads would have been very cool, I think. And maybe like an interchangeable arm that has a tear in it. I wish they'd have given him the Saiyan armor, the Saiyan Saga skirt pieces, and maybe some way to plug in a tail. Just a lot of missed opportunity to make the figure feel a little more complete. It's a good looking figure. Is it $80 good? It was fun to play with Zarbon and Dodoria. Again, two very slept on figures. I think you could probably find them still for under 100 or close to 100, which is pretty much what they would cost if they came out today. Vegeta, by virtue of pairing really nicely with them and the upcoming Kui figure, has to be in my collection. Not exactly a slam dunk for Tamashii on this one, more of a free throw, I think, but it's Vegeta in the Saiyan and Frieza Saga style armor. I hope you've enjoyed. This has been the Art of Action Figures. These ankles are so terrible. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.